Ladies and gentlemen,
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society. And we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. I am asking your help in the tremendous task of informing and alerting the American people, confident that with your help, man will be what he was born to be, free and independent.
And that's that. We can stand up and fight and ride all day through the night. We can make this change right and see our hopes and our dreams come to fruition. It's time to unite as one, calling out to our founding fathers. This is our mission to make you proud.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of Humanity Awaken Radio. I'm one of your hosts, Brian Bolin, and with me as always is my co-host, Phil McNamara.
Hi, everybody.
Tonight we have a special guest. We're going to be interviewing Mitch Fillion. He's an indie filmmaker from Toronto, certified in natural health with films on spirituality, UFOs, and the Paul is Dead theory. Other areas of research include the truth about cancer and other autoimmune diseases, Stanley Kubrick, and 9/11. Tonight we're going to be talking with him about his new film, Calling Occupants, where he's been able to get a bunch of our UFO speaker favorites on camera with some of the likes of Stanton Friedman, Stephen Bassett, Nick Pope, Grant Cameron, just to name a few. And well, let's just go right into it. I want to bring Mitch onto the show. Mitch, how you doing?
Good. How are you guys?
Fantastic.
We're doing great.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us about your new film, Mitch.
So yeah, Calling Occupants. It's centered around me and a small group of friends, 3 other friends, and we set out to try and make human-initiated contact with extraterrestrials. So basically all the 3 films that I've made, there's kind of a trilogy now. The first one was From Uneasy Dreams, Calling Occupants, and then the new one I'm working on, Who Is This Now? They're all shot in a disguised documentary format, so to speak. So basically, and there's no budget for any of them either. So I'm the lead actor, and I'm the director, I'm the cameraman. I do pretty much everything. I do the sound. There's no crew there for about 90% of all these productions. And then the odd time when I want some more like handheld feel to a scene, then I'll hire a camera guy for a couple $100, but that's about it. It's usually just me doing it all.
DIY.
Anyways, we actually set out to, we're following the protocol of Stephen Greer. I don't know if you're familiar.
Absolutely. I've actually downloaded the app before.
Okay.
So I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah. So we the film starts out with us, attempting to do this ourselves and just talking about, the problems surrounding kind of UFO disclosure and the cover up that, dating back to Roswell when we recovered 2 crashed UFO flying saucers, and one of them I think was significantly intact to be recovered, and I think there was a couple bodies that were actually still alive at the time. And this we talk about this in the film with Paul Hellyer, who explains that it was during around the time that Operation Paperclip was happening, and they were bringing Nazi scientists over to
Real
help.
quick, just so everyone knows who Paul Hellyer is, just to clarify
yeah.
that. He's the Canadian Prime Minister of Defense.
Yeah.
So he is no joke, and he came forward about 2 years ago. And, for Mitch to get an interview with him is pretty powerful. It's a really big deal. If you guys are looking for credibility, where's the proof? This is the testimony we've been looking for a long time.
And I think he's like 92 now.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
He does not look it.
No, and he's he came into the conference. So sorry, I should back up. We ended up filming the Alien Cosmic Expo in Brantford, Ontario. So we went there and filmed the whole disclosure conference, and then interviewed Travis Walton and Grant Cameron and a bunch of people while we were there.
I've met a lot of those guys. Travis Walton, Grant Cameron. Those dudes are just sweethearts.
Oh yeah, they're the best.
They're really good. They're good dudes.
And the way that we make this film, where we're just kind of having these conversations with people, I think they were kind of let their guard down, and we're just kind of free to open up and get excited about certain things, and just different than the normal interview formats you usually see, kind of thing.
Absolutely, that's really cool to hear. So tell me, Mitch, did you guys actually use the app when doing the initiations and follow the whole Stephen Greer protocol, or did you guys find another way of doing that?
We didn't use the app. I had a friend. Then this is in the film too. I had a friend he's like an ambient noise musician. So I was like, can you create a piece of music that while you're creating it, you have it in your mind that it's for the aliens and it's this peaceful call? Because I feel like music has that ability to contain some of these feelings or intentions. So I had him create this piece of music. And then, so we brought that out into the field, and we're kind of doing these meditations. There was a mantra that Stephen Greer talks about. I think it's like, Nama, Nama. So we actually traveled up north of Toronto to Algonquin Park, this just huge, open area, so we could see the stars better, and didn't pan out that night, but I don't know if I want to ruin the ending, but we did end up making contact, I would say, because, I guess I can talk about it. But at the end of the film, we got together with, I think Jonathan's about 25 years old, and his mom, they run this website, ufocontact.com in Toronto. So we got in touch with them, and she kind of led the meditation. And it was a cloudy night, and she set the intention for the sky to clear, and immediately the clouds parted and the sky cleared. And then within 5 or 10 minutes, we saw 3 really bright flashing lights after we called out to the aliens saying, we're here, we want to make contact, we have peaceful intentions and all this stuff. And I got one of them on camera that's at the end of the film. The first 2 would just happen too fast in an area we weren't filming of the sky. And at first, one of the camera guys that was there, he was skeptical, saying, it was a geosynchronous satellite or something. But I mean, I've looked into the sky so many times throughout my whole life, and I've never seen one of these. And then to have 3 of them in different areas of the sky just flash on and off like light bulbs, 5 minutes after we sit out there and are calling out to them, it just seems too coincidental. I
feel like when people go to that kind of conclusion in a situation like that, it's the mind's rationale to understanding a glitch in the matrix.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And the thing is, honestly, the music is math, and
vibration.
Math is a universal language. So when you're creating that, what you're doing is you're sending out into the universe math equations, and if they can interpret that, then they're like, oh, okay, we recognize what this is. Even if the music itself doesn't make any sense to them, but the tonality, the feelings and the notes and everything is. And so, and also it speaks to the fact that of human consciousness and how powerful that really is, that you were able to affect bringing these beings into fruition just by setting an intention and chanting and sending that music out. It's pretty powerful.
And another thing that happened earlier on in the film is it was the first scene we had shot for the film, and I thought I took it as a good indication that we should keep moving forward with it. But anyways, it's a scene where I'm telling one of my friends that, we should try this human initiated contact, but we should also be aware that these aliens, they may not just come as a disc in the sky. We have to be aware that they could be interdimensional beings or whatever. So we have to just be aware if anything weird happens to take note of it. And right as I say that, like the lights in his like kitchen and living room all do this like flicker on and off, and it's caught in the film, and it totally just freaks us out because the timing of it right after I kind of am talking to him about this stuff. And it didn't feel like an electrical surge. Like he was like, that's never happened in my house before. And he's lived there like 4 years or something, right? So I don't know if just like our energy and excitement over starting the project was something that caused this shift in electricity, or it was we were connecting with something else. I don't know, but something happened.
It's very interesting too, because let's take that a step further, because let's say some of the visitors, the beings, are using anti-gravity. If they're using anti-gravity, it's feeding off the opposite polarity of the Earth,
right?
The geomagnetism, and then that's basically what it is. And then if the electricity is feeding off the Earth and they're near you in some way, that might be one way of explaining it. I don't know why that just came to me.
Wow.
But that seems like a logical thing just from a third party, hearing that. And, I've had weird experiences like that. And when you're in it, it's just so, I guess, supernatural, is really the only word. But, like, John Keel likes to talk about the super spectrum and how all the ghostly ghouls and, like, ETs and fairies, like come out from the super spectrum and say hi once in a while, and sometimes that's the way that they let you know that they're there.
Right. Yeah, there was another experience when I was I'm guessing I was about 21 years old, still living at my parents', and I had a group of friends out in the back porch, and we were just hanging, drinking beers or whatever. And there was a moment, it was wintertime, there was a moment when I just noticed that the whole back glass sliding door, looked like it was like a stained glass window. Like the pattern was so perfect and intricate that it didn't look like it was just from the ice rain or whatever. And as soon as I noticed it, my one friend goes, "Is that supposed to look like that?" And as he says that, everyone else besides me and him just kind of shuts off. Like all my other friends, this is a true story, I don't know how to explain it to this day, but everyone else shut off like drones and like their heads went down. And then my friend is just having this one-to-one conversation with me. And at the time, like I was really religious, and I just explained it like, oh, it's God, like God speaking to me through a friend, which I still believe could be the case. But I have a different understanding of God now that I'm older. It's not a Bible-based God or whatever. But so anyways, so he has this conversation with me, and this guy's like a bit of a stoner, right? And he's talking to me like with words I would never normally hear him speak. He's like saying blasphemy and all these things that are like straight out of like a scripture or something, right? And then so the party ends, and I go out to like another park and meet up with some other friends.
Wait. We're going to skip over everyone being shut off?
Okay.
What happened during that? I need to know this.
I want to know about that.
So I don't know. It was right when he pointed to the sliding door.
Yeah.
He's like, "Is that supposed to look like that?" And then once he like pointed that out, it was like almost this whole shift in consciousness. Like, oh, you're aware that something weird is happening right now because stained glass is not supposed to look like that. And to be honest, I can't even tell you when everyone like came to again, but I would say like it was at least 5 minutes that I was just talking to him. And it's strange thinking back to it because I didn't even feel the urge to go shake some of those friends and say, what are you doing? Because I was so engaged in the conversation. I was like, oh yeah, this is just normal. This is happening. And then, yeah, I guess at some point, it could have been my mom came and knocked on the sliding door, and then everything snapped back to normal or something. But
That's
it was
really
very
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, so did you notice any missing time or anything like that? Like when you decided to go to the other party, where you're like, "Wow, it's much later than I really thought it was."
No. So the weird part is that when I left, I went and started telling a friend. I didn't tell him that someone spoke to me through God. I was just like, "There's something I got to show you," because I wanted to show him the stained glass sliding door, how the ice rain just made this perfect pattern. And so I bring him back, and he's just like amazed by it. It just looked like it was a manufactured, stained glass
It was
door.
still there.
Yeah, it was still there. So we come in, and we're sitting at the kitchen table in my parents' house, and I say to him, I have to tell you something. I think God spoke to me through Steve. And the very second that I said this blue light shot through my whole kitchen.
I've had that experience, the blue light shooting through the house. I have for sure had that experience, and it freaked me out. And I was with my sister after I had been watching some anomalous object. And we have a podcast that we talk, where Phil and I both talk about our UFO experiences. But that exact thing happened to me, just one shot. Bluish, greenish kind of light. And looked up in the sky, didn't see anything, but it was weird, you know what I mean?
Mm. And he saw it too, and it was, right as I'm telling him this thing, and the timing of it was
gives you chills just thinking about it. It's like those. Do you ever have? There's something I want to ask you immediately after this, because this is so awesome. But do you ever have any, when you try to think back to that event, do you have any like lacunal amnesia about it, like where your mind wants to forget it as you're remembering? And the only thing that kind of makes okay,
because I'm all about that stuff. I'm a weirdo.
Well, I am too. I'm all about it. And like when I look back to my experiences, I have a lot of lacunal amnesia with it, where when I try to think about it, as I'm retelling the story, my mind will start
just
forgetting
like it's a dream or something. You're saying like
not really. Like I know it was real, but my mind will start forgetting what actually happened as I'm telling it, as if like I have a memory block or something like that, or like it goes further than what actually just happened. And I know that's possible, like common with certain abductees.
I just mentioned the dream thing because you wake up and you only remember a dream for a few seconds,
like
and
the
it's
mind
gone.
that wants to
and it was like the most important thing. It's like, I figured out the cure for cancer. It's like, it's gone. It's like, how do you forget something like that?
The design on the stained glass window, it's very interesting how you're saying that, or it looked like a stained glass window, because to me it's like, okay, so ice is water, and we know that when you vibrate like sand or water, or tell water love, you write love in the water bottle, it forms those ice crystals into these very geometric, like it's like sacred geometry, the shapes, or you put it to you vibrate it to the frequency of a certain key or something, or a certain frequency.
I forgot what that's called.
So it could have been the energy field, like call it God or whatever you want to call it. It could have been that his presence there was causing this.
Or if you even want to go further with it, it could even be a positive ET craft maybe that could have made that vibration outside, that was outside, Did you guys get a picture of it?
No, which is crazy, but I didn't even have a cell phone back then, I don't think so.
Yeah, that was before like we all had cell phones with us everywhere.
Yeah. Wow. But I have two friends that remember it quite well, so
it's good. It's always good to have corroboration when it comes to things like that.
Mm.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you've had some pretty amazing experiences, and why don't you give us a little background?
I can tell you one more thing that happened to me quite often around that time when these kind of mysterious events were unfolding. I know there's a lot of people who are obsessed with like numbers and numerology, but I wouldn't call myself one of those people. The way that I explain it is that the number was obsessed with me. Because it wasn't like I was looking at the clock every few minutes trying to see a certain number. It was. I
had this experience too. I'm really interested to see what number you say.
It was 23, and this was before the number 23 movie came out and all this stuff. Because I hated that movie. It's just totally not what the number meant to me. But I'll tell you, like that whole summer, every time I would come home, and like I said, I didn't have a cell phone, so I'd just be hanging out with friends and say, "Okay, I'm going to leave." Every time I would come through my parents' backyard and in through the back door. Right as I would come inside, it'd be 12:23 on the kitchen clock. And a lot of the times it would be like, right when I looked at it, it would change from 22 to 23, like the split second. And then if I was like eating a bowl of cereal, like getting ready for bed, I'd lay down in bed, look at the clock, 1:23, wake up in the morning, 10:23. As I get in the car, turn it on, 11:23. And I was dating a girl at the time. Her house number was 23. She was born on November 23rd. It was crazy.
I had the same exact, like to the weirdest degree, where you're like, this is so far beyond coincidence. This is actually so far beyond synchronicity that this is like, a direct, I don't know, communication or something, and like I became obsessed with it too. Like, you know, it's like you said, like the number became obsessed with me. Like, so my numbers after my UFO experiences were 314 or any variation of it, 413, you know, however way you want to put it.
Right.
On all clocks all the time, you know, 1034, you know, whatever it was. 251, 1111, and 316, and any different variation of those numbers, but seeing them everywhere. It got to the point where I started watching TV shows, and in the TV show, the main character would be getting out of a cab that had one of those numbers up to apartment 314 or something, like within the same scene, multiple times a day. Like, I was freaking out a little bit. You know, so far beyond coincidence, so far beyond synchronicity. Yeah, go for it.
Can I ask you what it made you feel when you saw the number? Because for me, it was like this reassuring thing that, like, it almost felt like something was communicating with me, like another life form or something from another dimension was saying, "Hey, like, I'm trying to tell you that I'm here. I'm watching you." It was that kind of feeling. It was, and then if I would ever see like 1224 like walking in my back, it was because I was having a bad night, or I was like not being fair to myself or whatever, you know. It was, and I was like, oh, it was kind of a reminder, like, oh, I should smarten up. And then,
well, for me at the time, I think I got so consumed with being hyper aware of, I don't know if you've ever had that a feeling when you see a UFO where you're trying to find them and you look at them and you know that they're looking back at you. You just like intuitionally know.
Right.
Have you ever had that?
No, I haven't had that kind of experience.
Well, most of my experiences were really seeking them, like human-initiated contact. That's how all my experiences started. It wasn't through meditation. It was just like, if you're out there, I'm ready. You know, I'm ready. Like, I went so far out with like my energy and like my consciousness. And this is before I was even in tune to spirituality. This is before I was even meditating. I just kind of harnessed what I guess was maybe my third eye, and just connected. And I started seeing things. There you go, seeing these objects in the sky, and then I was to the point where I realized like I could tell them which ways I wanted them to move in the sky. And another one of my buddies had that same experience, but there was only one way that they would move. But in my head, I thought I was controlling it. But then when I heard my buddy say it, it was the same movements. It was left. I guess for them it's left. That's really weird thinking about this, but left, right, up, down. And when my buddy told me that too, it was like, and I never told him the story, and we lived a mile away from each other. I like lost it because I didn't want to tell anybody because I thought I looked like a lunatic. And then he said that verbatim when he had a UFO sighting, because we live in the same area, and that just like shocked me. You know, you can't explain that. But as far as getting back to your original question, when you said like, what did I feel? Like, I was feeling a lot of fear during that time, like a lot of fear. And you know, the more I've researched the subject, there's that possibility of it could be self-induced fear. And now after coming out of it and kind of having like an awakening from it, and like getting so into all these topics, wanting to figure out like, why does the rest of the world not know that this is real? Like, when I saw these things, I thought I was the first person to ever see a UFO that wasn't crazy. And you know, and then I start getting deeper, getting into like, you know, the Illuminati, like the power control structure, like, you know, how far this whole thing goes with UFOs. And I got I became a researcher, you know, got very deep into it. And but during that time, you know, it was just so new to me and so frightening. It was like, I thought we were the top of the food chain, and now I know that we're not. It's just terrifying. But I think through that, it was like, you know, pain is the touchstone to all spiritual growth. Yep. You know, and like I went through so much fear and pain during that time that I came out of it and just became this new man as a result of it, and said, that's about as fear as I can get in my entire life. I don't want to live that way anymore. And there's a possibility that it inspired the fear in me so that I could come out stronger than ever. You know, I need to go through that dark night of the soul. And I did walk away with some songs, because I'm a musician and audio engineer, and recording a bunch of songs for my band that, like, I didn't know what was going on at the time, but I just had this pushed to just write all these super progressive songs that just nonstop. I literally wrote like 4 albums worth of material in like 2 years. And in that process, one of the songs was called The Portal Opener. You know, I started dealing with some of these subjects and like portals and stargates and stuff like that. And I didn't know it at the time, but I put those numbers that I had been seeing in the song. And I said how those numbers were the access codes to the time portals to gain entry to the 4th dimension. And then I start looking into the numbers a little bit more after that. And I'm like, okay, 314 is like pi. And,
Right.
you know, then 1111 and then 251 and then 316. And it just like, I forget exactly the whole context of how I figured it out, but somehow I figured out that had to do with portals. And it had a lot to do with the song once I researched more into it. And it totally blew my mind. And, you know, I was just going off intuition, what I felt like needed to be done. And, I think I might have came out through that with, like, you know, some downloads.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty...
Yeah, Grant Cameron talks a lot about the downloads, too, eh?
I've heard him talk about that, yeah. What did he talk about in the film about that?
No, not in the film. He mainly focused on... like rock and rolls, the influence on extraterrestrials on rock and roll, like musicians, like how John Lennon has the story of seeing the UFO with Minnie Pang. They're both standing there naked on the balcony of the Dakota,
Yeah.
And he said it was so close that he could hit it with a rock. And he talks a bit about the missing time, because I think, it's kind of similar to my case where all my friends turned off. And like they were just like these drones in the room, not active anymore. May Peng claims that when they saw this UFO, like there was no one else around, like no cars driving on the street below, and like no one in the balconies and apartments. So it was just like time stopped, right?
Well, that's the weird thing about the whole people getting shut off or is time stopping situation when these events happen. I think it was Lynn Moulton Howe or maybe Yvonne Smith who was talking about an event where some people got shut off at a party, just like where you were at. And the thing that I found very compelling about that is that one person stayed conscious and a bunch of the other people turned off. But one of the people who turned off was smoking a cigarette. And the cigarette continued burning all the way down to the butt. Until it stopped burning in the entire situation.
Really
so
That's
to me, that shows that time isn't actually stopping. People are just turning off. That's how I interpret that.
It's interesting.
That like blew me away when I heard that.
See, it's weird because since I was a little kid, I always watched. I was a Star Trek fan, and so the idea of, you know, racial of multiple, you know, extraterrestrial races is so common and so ingrained in me that it doesn't. It's not if an extraterrestrial landed in front of me and said hello, I just put my hand out and shake it. Like it's not, and there's not going to be any fear there. There's not going to be anything. I'm just going to really be fascinated by looking at this being and saying, "Wow, hi," you know.
For sure, yeah. That's one of the biggest problems is the xenophobia, and that's going to be why there's this weaponization of space kind of thing, right? Or militarization of space. And that's one thing like I'm kind of afraid of too when you see these movies like Independence Day. And it's just showing aliens in a bad light, right?
They always do that, and it's like, and when they do show an alien or an extraterrestrial movie, like where the alien is nice, E.T. What's that other one with the little
Super 8.
Super 8? What?
Is that one
No,
nice?
Super 8 was that was like a Godzilla thingy.
I just like the kids in that one.
What's the other one? It's
They had
Paul?
fun directing the movie.
Paul. That's Paul. You know, and they all look. You know, they have blue eyes, and they're like, "Hi," and you know, and it's like, and it's silly and it's goofy, and they're getting drunk, and they're like doing all this stuff, and so they don't really. They're skirting around the real issue here, and they're really, you know, there's a rumor out there that in the community that there's going to be a fake alien invasion.
Yeah, we talk about that in the film.
To, you know, because we need a new enemy now. The control system always needs an enemy, and the whole Al Qaeda
military-industrial complex.
They need something to fight, or we are, you know, or there's no way for them to justify the wars.
Yeah.
Well, I think as far as
their funding,
the fake alien invasion, you know, we're talking about Project Bluebeam, and there's actual like documents, you know, like that Some people have gotten into, like Nick Redfern has gotten into that. And
well, actually, I was just on a conference call with Stephen Greer because I donated to the Kickstarter fund for his new movie, Unacknowledged. And he actually he has an interview that's going into the film where he interviews some like high military officer who says that we have been doing these fake alien abductions, like abducting people for whatever reasons to scare them, and
my labs for sure
with the ADRs or whatever.
Well, I know too that
alien replica vehicles, ARVs.
ARVs, yeah. The interesting thing about that is that almost seems to me kind of like a cyber warfare, because like we have like my labs where there's military abductions where people who have been abducted by actual ETs, the military finds out and has to go in and then they interrogate them because they need to know what happened in the interaction. Because if you think about it, it's kind of a national security issue.
Yeah,
and
then, I seem to think that it's rare that people are being abducted by actual aliens. I think Travis Walton's case is an interesting one to note, because I think the problem with Travis Walton is when the craft came down, everyone's still in the truck, and he runs out to try and go touch it or get near it. And if you watch the movie, they make it seem like they depict the story as if like the alien sent a beam down to electrocute him, like we want to zap him or whatever. But I think what actually happened, and Travis will talk about this new understanding he's come to, is that he just got too close, and there's this electromagnetic field or whatever. So he got too close to whatever was happening, and got electrocuted or maybe even died. And then the aliens were like, we have to abduct this guy now, or else it's going to be alien kills man, right? So they abduct him as like a rescue mission kind of thing. But I don't really know if there's like, I'm sure there's been cases where people are actually abducted, right? But that seems to be one of the main ones where it was like, oh no, we have to abduct him because we got to save this guy's life now, right?
Yeah, I think that was definitely an interesting case, much different than what a lot of other people experience, and it's unique therefore because of that. As far as people being abducted, whether it's by ET or military, something else that's really interesting that we can't discount is the regression hypnosis accounts.
Sure,
like I've just we had Barbara Lamb on the show a couple months ago, and I've seen Barbara speak just so many times, and like I've had dinner with her, and like she told me a bunch of stories of stuff that I don't even think she's spoken publicly about.
Oh, wow.
And when you hear some of those stories, there's just so many. She's been doing it for 25 years.
Yeah.
And something that I found that was very interesting, and you don't hear about this a lot, is that I've heard this in a couple of abductee cases where some people who have ET abductions, some people who have military abductions, and some people, there's military abductions where they actually will dress up like an ET. And the abductee in the regression hypnosis was able to, they thought that they were like drugged enough that they wouldn't be able to tell, but they were actually able to get close enough to see that the ET, it wasn't an ET, it was a human in like a costume.
Oh, wow.
And you could see the cloth like on the
Wow.
face. And they had him drugged up enough like where they thought they wouldn't be able to notice, but they just played along with it because they didn't want to like, deal with the repercussions.
Yeah.
And, so I think some of it is psi warfare, some of it is interrogation, and some of it could be actual like ET abduction. Who knows?
For sure, yeah.
It's so muddled because you just don't know. And what would be the end game of a thing like that? Like I've heard this before, and I thought to myself, why would you? I mean, after the Eisenhower thing, where Eisenhower made the treaty with the Greys, and they said, we'll abduct a certain number of people every year, and then they just lied and just started taking everyone, and the numbers so. At what point does the shadow government or the black ops people go, okay, wow, we have a huge problem here. We need to do some damage control on this, and we also need to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point, there's too many people out there going, hey, I got abducted, and and then the hybrid babies start, and then people are starting being brought up to the craps to be shown their children.
Yeah.
That And
we should mention the X-Files episode in the reboot, the recent the episode 1 was just like a full disclosure of all this real stuff. Even Stephen Greer was like, they just stole everything I've been, teaching for the last 20 years or whatever.
And they did it in about a 5-minute period, which is so impressive.
Yeah, it really
they
was.
just like laid it out. It was like, oh wow.
Yeah.
And then they sort of masked it over with all that other whatever the hell happened after that. Like it was all bad. But
Yeah.
I just couldn't. It was almost unwatchable for me. But that first episode was, I was like, my jaw hit the floor. I was like, wow, here we go.
But it's funny because now when anyone talks about this stuff, you'd be like, oh, that's just an X-Files episode. You know what I mean?
And that may have been the idea.
I haven't heard
there.
anyone do that though.
I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Like they did it in a way where it just felt so friggin' real when they were saying it. Like they weren't trying to be tongue in cheek about it. They were like very grim almost about it.
Yeah, I
In a
was
good
kind of
way,
wondering.
though.
I was kind of wondering like who let this thing come out.
Who let that
you know?
slip? Yeah.
Yeah, and who was the writer behind it? Like really, I don't know. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's it's weird because like I was saying before, once I stepped out of the matrix and I look at these things, I look at everything. It's like like standing above it. Not that I'm better than anybody, but I'm looking above it like a chess game, and instead of being involved in it, and because when you're involved in it, there's an emotional attachment to it. To everything we see on TV, the whole thing is designed to elicit an emotional response out of you. Like you talked about, your 9/11 experiences. I had a visceral reaction to this whole experience when I watched it on TV, and it was kind of split. It was, oh my God, this is actually happening, and then my next thought was, why are we doing this? What's the end game? Because it never occurred to me that the story that they told us on the news was true. Not even remotely told.
No.
I was like, oh, please. I said, you dropped two, 109-story towers in a fireball, but yet the passports survive. And now we've had 3 other incidences in which there's fire bombings and people are killed, but the passports survive. So, come on now. Let's, and so...
I actually just interviewed the UK researcher Andrew Johnson, and he's kind of he kind of works closely with Judy Wood. I don't know if you're familiar with her.
Yeah,
she's a forensic scientist, and I kind of see a lot of truth in her examination of the events that the buildings just pretty much turned to dust.
Yeah.
Because to me, it doesn't even look like a controlled demolition. Like we can say for sure the planes didn't bring those towers down, how they came down. But you have like these steel beams falling from the sky, they turned to dust. And like everything above the lobby is just dustified, and it's just gone. You don't have the rubble, like it's just, everything's gone.
Yeah. When I saw that, I immediately went, what did we just see? Like, what was this? Because it wasn't, I watched, I went to Las Vegas on a couple of occasions and watched them demolish some of the hotels that I used to stay in when I was younger. And when you watch a demolition of a building and you can see it, and that's Tower 7, that was a controlled demolition.
Yeah, for
sure. It was real clear. What do you think it was, and how did you come to that conclusion, or what evidence did you have or bring to
From looking at the Judy Wood evidence, it seems to me that it was an energy phenomenon. So it was something similar to, electromagnetics. They say it was a free energy weapon. So whether you're talking about like, something similar to Tesla technology or something like this, but it was a directed free energy weapon. And there was a shift in the Earth magnetic field during each tower drop. You see this huge shift in the Earth's magnetic field. You have different accounts of people being levitated blocks and carried blocks during this event. Like I think there was one journalist or something who tells this story about how when these towers are coming down, he was lifted up in the air and carried a couple blocks. So like, to me, that it's just an energy phenomenon that's going to turn this entire building just into dust.
So
what else can do that?
It was feeding off the Earth, you think?
Yeah, and there was also this huge hurricane that was just off the shore at the time too. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Some people speculate that it did, but I'm not too certain.
Yeah, I'd heard about that too.
So possibly could have even came from a HARP facility or from Pine Gap.
It could have, but I think that we're looking at something even more powerful, something that none of us have seen yet. And I honestly think that, and it's weird because, and I've said this to many of my friends, I said, ever since 9/11 happened, I feel like the Earth, like the safety net of the planet dropped out. Like there was, we may have even shifted time, what's the word I'm looking for? Time stream, or time, we shifted into a different time,
Timelines.
Thank you, timeline. Wow, that went right out of my head. And because everything feels different from that moment forward. Like, not that I don't feel any less or more safe than I did before, but I just feel like everything's faster and less. There's more chaos and there's more. And people just the country that I lived in prior to that moment. The image in my head of America when I was a little kid is not existing. It just doesn't exist anymore. And I don't know whether it's because I'm getting older and I know more, or whether it's because I don't have that visceral reaction to it anymore because I've done so much research on this. And I concur with you. I believe that whatever it was that hit those towers was unlike anything we've ever seen before, and it's really going to be interesting to find out what it was, because I really want to know the mechanisms of how it works, because that was pretty frightening. And have we used it before? I mean, will we use it again?
Well, I think we may have used it to target UFOs and shoot them down, which is another scary thing, right? To think that, you know, these things have never shown to mean us any harm, as far as I can tell. You know, they just show up and they're being more observers than anything. And to think that we're just shooting them down and they're still being friendly to us, like, how long are they going to remain friendly? Especially if we are trying to venture out further into space with some of these weapons. It's like, they're not going to let that happen.
No.
And that's why I think there is, like, there may be some bad aliens out there, but I think there's got to be some form of policing on the universe where I would say it could even be 50-50. But in my mind, I would think once you reach a certain level of consciousness or intelligence, you're going to be more peaceful than evil. But maybe that's just silly of me to think. But I would think that if there is a bigger percentage of the good aliens, that they're sort of creating this policing, you know what I mean? That they're not going to let the bad ones go out and start destroying everything.
Well, part of what I've been hearing too is that our solar system is more like a penal colony. It's sort of like a resting spot for negative ETs that have violated whatever laws exist in the universe, and that's part of the reason why we're hearing so much about this. That our entire existence maybe is a direct result of genetic manipulation of some being that was here before, that no longer exists, that has a combination of several different things, and that there's a lot of stuff being the very idea that we would go into space in the condition that we're in right now and go to try to colonize Mars, which Corey Goode has already stated pretty emphatically is already colonized. There are millions of people that actually live on Mars, and there's 2 or 3 indigenous beings that survived the cataclysm. And so here we come, super monkeys coming out into space with our energy weapon that we don't understand how it works, and here we are, hello, and we're going to mount it on ships and try and say hi to the people of the universe. I think we're in for a rude, frightening shock when we find out what's really going on, and when America and the world finds out, with all of the secret space program stuff that's now starting to leak out, the vastness of what's really going on out there. It's so amazing, and it's going to change the entire history of our planet, and that's the reason why the control system is trying so hard to distract us with this so-called election and all this other crap.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna see a lot in our lifetime.
Oh yeah,
like it just really feels like things are building at a rapid pace, and that hopefully it brings about a new consciousness or coherence. That
on that level, I've been thinking, so I've been kind of quiet, just like listening to you guys, you know what I mean? And like, I really got this intense vision in my head of like pretty much exactly what you were just talking about, where it's like it has to be this blend of both things. You know, it's like you were saying, Phil. It's like there's a possibility that we were, you know, genetically manipulated, you know, possibly by Anunnaki, and let's say that's the case. Let's just start there. Let's say that's the case. It's kind of like we're like seeds. They plant our seeds. We're seeds. They harvest us, and then they feed off it. Because if they're negative beings, like supposedly what the insiders are saying, that they feed off fear. So we're being harvested for fear. But in that process, we're still conscious beings. That's like the loophole. It's like they have to harvest a conscious seed. And then in that process, we're going through a more rapid spiritual growth because of all the negatives. So we're reliving all of our karma in this lifetime. And that's why things may be going so quickly. And I think 9/11 might have been the catalyst of even more fear farming.
Right.
And this catapult of time almost moving faster, because I have definitely noticed the time going extremely fast.
Everything feels different.
So much quicker. And I think part of that is that our vibration is speeding up.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily time. It's the way we're experiencing time based off how fast we're vibrating within our spirituality and how much we're relieving karma in the process.
And there's so many different levels to this that you know, what if the 9/11 attacks had twofold? It was for the earthbound beings that are negative, that want to create war, because they're stuck in the matrix and they're stuck in the I must make money, I must be rich, I must have power thing. But on a cosmic level, it was something that started the catalyst of changing the vibration of the planet.
It needed to happen. It's like a junkie who needs his fix. He's going to do it in the most crazy way, just to get his fix, even though he might have to go to jail and not be able to use for a week. But he's still going to do it and get that fix for that one time, even though he might be locked up in jail for the next week.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. We talked to Tom Clearwater as part of the film, and he talks a lot about scalar humanity and basically how humans are basically like versions of like a Tesla coil. So there's this polarity, and it kind of relates to what you guys are saying in the sense that, because we would talk to Tom about certain things that we think are bad, just what's going on the planet. And he would say like, well, no, you need that negative to bring about consciousness or coherence, because if everything was just positive, basically Tesla technology, it uses polarity to tap into the core of what matter is, and it's a coherent science because it runs off pretty much the fundamentals of nature, this polarity exists in everything, right? So that technology has the power to do so much good, but then so much evil, as we've seen in the 9/11 case, right? So, but it's just interesting talking about polarity. It's like you have to realize that, these things are bad, but they're also bringing about a new consciousness shift.
On your bio, it also talks about you getting into alternative health and like cancer cures. And I think this is a good time to kind of get into that topic, because we're talking about technology that brings about using positive or negative energy to help us, either grow spiritually or possibly even physically too. Literally 2 nights ago, I just read an article from a website that I'm subscribed to called, I think it's called the healthybackinstitute.com. And this guy's really on the cutting edge of finding new good technologies and ways of staying healthy. And he just published this. He didn't publish it, but he brought it back to light of this woman who is like in her 90s now, who's using positive and negative frequencies to completely phase out cancer, and how a lot of it's related back to parasites within the body and has nothing to do with what we're trying to use to treat it.
Right.
And
Tom was talking about how with this Tesla technology, you can pretty much just vibrate the disease away.
You phase it out of existence.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing in the audio world, like if you're, you have to deal with phase when you're working with audio, and you can literally, if you do the phase in a certain way, you can make it so that you don't even hear anything.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And it's a very powerful thing. And audio is all vibration.
Right.
We're picking up with this microphone as we're speaking right now, waveforms, and all the waveform is picking up vibration.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So could you give us a little bit more on what you found out, the health-wise stuff that you've been talking about, and what you
Yeah, for sure. When I was a kid, I was fascinated by the idea of being the person to discover the cure for cancer. But the way that I looked at it back then is like you kind of had to be a scientist, and you kind of had to like be in a lab looking under a microscope, and it was all kind of chemically based or whatever. But I think using that reductionist view for medicine is the wrong way to go. You got to take like a whole body approach. And I was suffering with like extreme allergies all my life, like rashes on my scalp, like face, arms. I basically had hives if I wasn't on Benadryl 24/7. So, I was researching my whole life. I didn't want to live a life like this forever, but it just seemed that I would, because I tried every diet and nothing was working, right? So I've read this book called the 80-10-10 diet. And that's just basically a ratio, 80% carbs, 10% fat, 10% protein. But the book basically outlines a fruitarian approach. So you're basically eating the way that you would in nature, so to speak. So I'll just outline a day in the life for me. I might wake up and eat a watermelon or two for breakfast, and then I wait a few hours, eat a few bags of grapes, wait a few hours. Like I'm eating very simply, like you would, like a monkey would eat in nature. You wouldn't be making like I do eat salad, but you know what I mean? You wouldn't be mixing all these different things at once. You kind of, when you simplify the digestion down like that, you're absorbing more nutrients. You're not creating toxins from the, undigested proteins or starches or whatever. So there's even certain foods, if you eat them together, like protein and starches, which everyone eats sandwiches, hot dogs, or whatever, it's you're going to end up like fermenting the starches, and the proteins will rot and all this stuff. So basically, it's an approach where you're eating foods that are still alive, uncooked foods, and you're eating them in combination so that they digest and assimilate effectively. And so, yeah, like you don't really have cancer forming in bodies that are eating this, eating this healthy, but it also has a lot to do with the acid alkaline balance, right? So a lot of foods are acid forming. Cancer lives in an acid forming or an acidic environment. So if you're eating all these alkaline foods, which are all fruits and vegetables, then it's really, you're not providing the environment for cancer to grow, right? But then the other thing is, we also have to be aware that even these, or if you're buying all organic, even these fruits are being grown in soil that is deficient in all the nutrients that should be there. Like farmers are only, I think it's like, I forget what their fertilizer is called, NPK or something, but they're only using like the 3 kind of nutrients that are needed to grow, and our bodies need upwards of 60 or whatever that's in the soil, right? So the workaround that I found for that is there's this supplement called barley grass juice powder, and all it is, it's barley grass grown in the most nutritious soil, and it's harvested at its like peak nutritional moment. Because like we also harvest fruits before they're fully ripe and all this stuff, and you're getting less nutrients if you're picking them before they're ready, right?
Right.
So anyways, so they juice this barley grass and then they dry it at low temperatures. So it's not cooked. It's just dehydrated or whatever. And it's made into a powder. So what you get is just essentially this raw barley grass juice powder. And it's just full of it's like nature's multivitamin. There's no fillers. All it is just all the nutrients that were grown in this nutritionally dense soil and then harvested at its peak nutrition, peak moment where it has, it's absorbed all the chromium, everything that even these nutrients that, take longer to absorb into the plants, they're waiting for them to the right moment. And you just put this in your smoothies or juices or whatever, and it's adding a lot of those extra nutrients that are lacking in the soil. So, and then, so here's another thing to add. Even if you have a person doing all this, perfect diet, they're adding the barley grass, they're doing the proper food combining. you can still run into iodine deficiency because that's one of the major things lacking in our soil. But we actually need it more than we did before because we're being bombarded by the other halides like bromide, chlorine, fluoride, and all these things are pushing iodine out of the body because they have different molecular weights, and a lot of them are, I don't know if it's, some are smaller, some are heavier, whatever, but some of them, if you're going to take an equal amount of iodine, equal amount of bromide, the bromide's going to overpower the iodine, right? And so you can have a brominated thyroid where instead, if your body's not taking enough iodine, the bromide just fits in its slot like a key in a lock. It's just like, oh, I fit in here, but it's toxic, right? And it's doing damage. Like that's why women are getting breast cancer because they're low in iodine or their bodies are too acidic.
Do you take a iodine supplement, like a nascent iodine?
I take it's basically the Lugol's formula. It's like a certain percentage of potassium iodide and iodine or something, but they've made it into tablets. And yeah, most stuff that I try and find around in health stores is just no good.
Let me ask you a question about the. Wait, hold on one sec. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, I just had a pop up on the computer. Okay, so I did a bunch of research on iodine about a year or two ago. And all the stuff you're saying is making sense. And I feel like there's this disconnect between the understanding of how important iodine is for the body right now compared to the Western medical world, the medical doctors. Because I explained this all to my mother, and she got us some nascent iodine. But when she talked about it with her doctor, the doctor was just not about it at all. Was saying, no, you can't take this, it's too dangerous, and blah, 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 and blah, blah, blah. And what have you found with the difference between what a medical doctor will say about it compared to what you're learning?
Well, I think they only, some of them only get, 7 hours of nutritional training in their whole medical schooling or something. They don't really know a lot about the fundamentals of how the body works and how it reacts to certain mineral imbalances or vitamin imbalances. They're more so like, what new medication is going to be a quick fix for this problem? I think there is great use for like emergency room doctors. Like in those cases, they're, I'm not.
And we're back.
Hey.
Hey, yeah, we got you picking up on the audio too. So, yeah, we had a little fallout there, but we are back.
Yep.
And Mitch, so just continue where we left off.
I can't see you guys anymore.
Can't see us? Well, we can see you perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
So
do you want me to just finish that thought maybe about the fasting?
Yeah.
So yeah, I can take it from the start, kind of summarize it. So yeah, I did a 10-day water fast at True North, and there was like 80-year-olds there that were on day like 21 or 27 of their fast, and they're walking around like it's a normal day, like nothing's wrong. And any normal person would probably think, oh, someone of that age could not go a day without food, or they're going to be too weak or die or whatever, right? Like some people can't miss a meal, and they get cranky. So anyways, a 10-day fast is relatively short for water fasting at True North, but after about 2 days, your body goes into ketosis and it starts burning fat for fuel. So even if you're a really healthy person and you're eating a raw vegan diet for 20 years or whatever, you may still have toxins that are stored in fatty tissue that just can't break down on a daily basis where you're constantly eating food and it has to be digested and all this stuff. And maybe you're eating too late at night and then you wake up and you eat right away. So, you're only having this like 6-hour window or 7-hour window where you're not eating, and your body can't do much detoxifying or healing in that time. So a water fast is you just get out of your body's way. And when you're burning fat for fuel, you start chipping away at some of these toxins that are stored in fatty tissue. So someone who eats super healthy can actually detox some gross stuff on a long fast and get rid of some lifelong problems, whether it's arthritis or certain types of diabetes or I mean, fasting has shown to pretty much cure everything. For a while, I thought cancer was one thing it didn't affect, and then True North just published a study where this woman was pretty much given a couple months to live, and she went and fasted for like 28 days, and her tumor was completely gone.
That's so incredible. I mean, this
Wow.
is the first time that I've actually like heard somebody talk this way about fasting, and now it like completely hit me in a brand new way, and it made so much more sense, like the validity and why it's important to do it.
For sure. Mm.
So what is True North? Is there like a website we can find when they publish new things?
They're the health center in Santa Rosa, California, and the doctors there are Dr. Alan Goldhammer and Michael Clapper, and they're just brilliant plant-based doctors. Their diet focuses more on cooked kind of starches, more like the John McDougall diet, and it's still healthy too, but in my mind, focusing more on raw fruits and simplified meals is a lot cleaner. But the barley grass, adding that in, and having the iodine too, if you're low in iodine. My mom had a couple breast cysts, and I didn't even really switch her diet too much. I just said you have to get off cheese because cheese promotes tumor growth more than anything. Sorry to, for those pizza eaters out there,
Rats.
cheese lovers.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah, I would say, people are trying, like, oh, I shouldn't eat red meat and all this stuff, but cheese is, I would say it's the deadliest food out there. Really.
Well, is it actually cheese, or is it like, a cow that is being pumped with genetically modified bovine growth hormone or GMO feed,
Well, I would say that even organic dairy has the protein casein. So casein is found in milk, but it's even more concentrated in cheese. Mm-hmm. And the China study, which was head up by Colin T. Campbell, is the largest nutritional study ever conducted, if you look it up. And basically they proved that casein, the protein in milk, has the ability to turn on and off cancer growth. So yeah, like if you're feeding it to rats, or even they looked at huge populations in China, some of these places where they just can't afford meat or dairy, and they're pretty much free of all these autoimmune diseases. And then you start moving into the populations where, they have, they can afford milk or meat or whatever. And then you start to see all these diabetes or whatever it is, cancers, other autoimmune diseases. So there's clearly a pattern. It was just, undeniable. And when these rats, I know rats aren't humans, but that's why they also did these human studies and these observations of all these different areas of people living in, rural areas of China or whatever. But yeah, anyways, when these rats were fed plant-based protein, they didn't get tumor growth. Even at higher percentages of the protein, the tumors didn't grow. But once you introduce this casein, milk protein, at percentages above whatever 5% or whatever it is, it's rapid tumor growth.
That's really interesting. A lot of things are kind of connecting for me now with you kind of bringing that in there, because I've seen some stuff talking about that, and you just kind of brought both worlds together there. It's incredible, man. You're really well knowledgeable in both these fields. No
one listens to me though. Not my girlfriend. Not.
It's hard to get people to listen, and something that I've learned, is like, especially someone you're in a relationship with, But something that I've learned is like, they're on their own like spiritual path and their own karmic path, and
for sure.
You can just kind of nudge them in the right direction, but not like shake them by the shirt and be like, you need to know this.
Yeah,
it's hard not to do that.
And also, I don't think I would want to live with someone or date someone like exactly like me, because I think it goes back to that whole polarity thing. Like, I wouldn't be the person that I am without her, because she is totally a different person and makes me see things that in a different light than I would normally see them, right? So
absolutely. Yeah, man, I just got out of a relationship, and it was very much that same way. And I learned so much about myself by being in that, like, that polarity, and I really feel like I grew so much as a man, and just on a spiritual level, like through that, to see the other sides of things that I've never tried to even look at before.
And Eckhart Tolle actually has helped us both tremendously when we read. Have you heard of the book The Power of Now?
Yes.
Yeah.
I read it.
Amazing. Yeah. Changed my life.
Changed a lot of people's life, and
Mm-hmm.
I wish we could incorporate some of its tenets a little bit more readily in our society. We would be a much healthier group of people if we did that.
For sure. Yeah.
It's I mean, I've reached the pinnacle of becoming 50 years old, and I never thought that I would live this long based on the lifestyle that I was leading up until the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm here, I really want to make it to 100, and so I'm always interested in finding out ways that people are doing. I grew up in Colorado, so we were meat and cheese, and that's how we were raised, and that's how I was raised, and fast food, and it worked out fine for a while. But when I turned 30, I blew up. I mean, I just literally, like, my metabolism shut down, and I just started packing on weight, and I was so stunned at how fast it came on, and it's taken 20 years and it's still on there. So it's. Well, go ahead.
I can tell you this: the diet that I eat, this like raw vegan diet, I do eat from time to time. I have steamed sweet potatoes because I think they're some of the longest living people on earth. I think it was the Okinawans. They're living till into their hundreds and tens or whatever, and their diet is basically 90% sweet potato and then wild berries or whatever else they're eating, right? But that's the basis of their diet, and they're if they're living the longest, then we have to. They have to be healthy foods, these steamed sweet potatoes. So, yeah, and I feel great on them, but I would not wake up and eat cooked food for breakfast or for lunch. It's always like at the end of the day. And that there's something to be said about food sequencing too, not just food combining, but the way that you sequence your foods throughout the day, because each food has a certain rate of digestion. So like I would wake up and eat a watermelon first because it would digest really quick because it's mainly like water, right?
Right.
You wouldn't. So people that like have have a steak dinner and then they have watermelon for dessert and it hurts their stomach and they're like, oh, like I don't like watermelon or something. It's because like you can't really eat a food that takes 15 minutes to digest on an empty stomach. You can't eat it after a food that's going to take 6-7 hours to digest because it'll just get held up in the digestion, in your stomach and ferment and just be caught there. Like
The craziest thing about like getting into these deep things with health is like this is when like I started my UFO research, and then I got into like the health issues of everything we're kind of talking about, and this can go so deep and so long, but this is like really the thing where the deeper and the deeper and the deeper you go into the health stuff, you really start to realize, I'm like, okay, this is something we can sink our teeth into that's actually factual, real, no matter what. It's like we don't have to meet it's like whether we meet a gray alien or not, is a different story. But this is something that is physical, that we could touch, that we can see the data, we can see the research, we can see how it affects our body when we change things up, and it's real and it's tangible. And the deeper I get into this thing, I really start to think to myself, we have been lied to literally about everything that we think we know is true. And I think there's two forms of this awakening that people are going through. One is finding it out on our own and having the willingness to seek truth. And then two is possibility the time where one of our official quote unquote leaders, tells us, or a higher being, that we've been lied to. And yes, the people researching this and saying this all along are all right. Like, because as a species, we need that like leader to tell us like yes or no for things to really sink in. And even us, I feel like being in the alternative community and researching these things, we still have those thoughts from time to time. I'm like, am I crazy? Like, is this really happening? Where like
there's a lot of information out there to sift through. But I feel like I've become a good researcher just because I've been doing it my whole life out of necessity. I had all these health problems. So I don't know. It's just, it would be like every night for 2 or 3 hours, I wouldn't go out. I was embarrassed to go out with my friends, my skin or whatever. So I would just be researching, and now I guess it's, since I've kind of reached what I think is the pinnacle of learning about health, it's like, what else can I learn about now? Right.
Hey, Mitch,
But,
so I wanted to start wrapping it up in just a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
But I wanted to steer back towards the film. I had a couple questions about the film before we wrap up.
Totally.
So you interviewed Stanton Friedman.
Yep.
And I thought that was interesting because he's kind of more of like a nuts and bolts UFO guy and like the documents and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And your film's more about human initiated contact. What did Stanton have to say about that?
We basically just interviewed him about his knowledge about the Roswell case because
Okay.
he was the first civilian investigator on the case. So he interviewed some of the I can't remember the deputy or colonel or whoever was there, but yeah, he talked to these guys firsthand, and they told him that what actually happened. So
While they were still alive.
yeah, exactly. Like some of them were dead when he tried to reach out to them, but
Also, he is pretty famous for reviewing the MJ-12 documents. Did you get a chance to talk to him about that? And I'm pretty sure he had a
No.
change in heart about it.
no, he might have talked a bit about that during the conference, but yeah, we only had a bit of time with him for the interview.
Gotcha. Well, are there any other like major points about the film that you'd like to talk about, or do you have any other questions, Phil?
No, I'm really looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, I can send you guys a private link because don't
Yeah, of course.
see it beforehand.
That
Awesome.
would be great.
Are there any other like major points in the film that you'd like to talk about to wrap up the show?
Oh yeah, so the Tom Clearwater guy that I spoke of a little bit, he has like a working like basically Tesla science machine in his house. So he shows us like how it works, and basically like he held an LED light up to it, and it just lit up like without plugging it in. It just lit right up. So that was kind of cool. Yeah.
What?
I mean, we
That's
really have to
seriously
get
really
to the
cool.
point where this kind of technology is readily available for everyone. Can you imagine what would happen if this was allowed in like third world countries?
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
I mean, whole civilizations could be changed and
Well, that's why Tesla was shut down, because J.P. Morgan, who was funding the whole thing, was like, I can't put a price tag on this like invisible free energy because anyone
Right.
can tap into it. How am I gonna put a meter on it?
Right.
Monetize it. Yeah.
So
It's a
that's
sad
why
thing,
he's-
but it's the world we live in with the business tycoons
and that's how we relate this technology into the film about UFOs. It's because tied to the UFO cover up is the cover up of the free energy technology, right? This electromagnetic technology. It's like once you admit that UFOs are real, that implicit in that is like a post-petroleum global infrastructure, because they're obviously using something other than petroleum to get from point A to point B. So
yes.
absolutely.
Yeah, gasoline doesn't work so well in space. I don't
yeah.
And when does the film come out, Mitch?
So it's premiering at the AGH World Film Festival in Hamilton, Ontario, this Sunday, October 23rd. 23 again. There you go.
Did you plan that?
No.
That's when it was?
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
And then it's gonna hit festivals throughout like the fall and stuff, and then I'll put it out on Blu-ray, and the Blu-ray will have like some extended interviews and behind the scenes and that sort of thing.
Awesome. You also
Exciting.
you have a new film coming out after that. Paul
Yeah,
is Dead. Do you
yeah.
want to talk a little about that?
Yeah, it's basically my character is setting out to prove that Paul McCartney died in 1966 and was replaced by a lookalike. So I know it sounds crazy, but there's a lot of clues in the album artwork, in songs, in the backwards messages, in just some of the weird interviews, Heather Mills or Paul McCartney, and there's if you examine like a few of the things individually, they might not seem too weird, but then when you see everything as a whole, you're like, something's going on here. This is not a coincidence that everything points to Paul being dead. And I mean, there is the chance that he didn't die, and they started this whole hoax to help with album sales and all this stuff. But the problem I have with that idea is that it's a cool idea for like a concept album, but why does it span their whole career, and why do these clues continue on to the solo work too? Is it just I don't know. It is a pretty cool like idea for a concept album if you came up with it. So maybe as musicians, it's still their inspiration.
Well, I will say this, like, you know, the Beatles are definitely interested in like magic.
Oh yeah,
like
black magic.
Yeah, black magic. Aleister Crowley, you know, they're very into all that, and you know, part of the whole elites methodology with pulling off these false flags, you know, like the darker magical side of the, you know, Illuminati or the Cabal, you know, that they have to tell us that they're doing these false flags or these different things before they happen, so that they can be relieved of the karma. And that's very crucial. And that sounds a lot like kind of what you're talking about, of like kind of putting it out there, but having like, you know, the back end story of how to kind of.
Yeah, and if you examine a lot of the people that are on the Sgt. Pepper cover, like it's
Crowley's on there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's on there, but you can also tie, like, there's 12 Freemasons on there, and there's a lot pointing to Paul or the replacement, if there was a replacement, that he was a Freemason. And then a lot of people on the cover were people that were really interested in, you know, social, like, engineering of the masses through, you know, LSD or whatever it was. You have Huxley on there who, you know, released Doors of Perception, which in my mind was basically just like this drug propaganda book that just got people so
like the beginnings of MK
yeah.
Ultra.
Yeah. Well, John Lennon talks, like, in, I think it was an interview with Playboy. It was really soon before he died. He said, we have to remember to thank the CIA for giving us LSD, but they were trying to control us and they actually set us free or something like that. And then he dies soon after, you know, making that statement in an interview. So I don't know.
That's so wild. I'm really excited to see what you come up with that, and like, you know, that whole subject is very interesting, and you know, I think that, you know, I applaud you for, you know, wanting to go after that.
It's just a cool idea for a film, yeah.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, this has been an incredible interview.
Absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, lots of
Thank
fun.
you.
We really enjoyed having you on the show, man, and you know, I want to hear how the film does. And we'll definitely have you back on for
maybe I can
Dead.
talk more about the Paul stuff. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely, man.
Awesome.
All right, man. Well, we will talk to you soon. And yeah, once again, I just had a great time on this interview, and
thank you so much
talk to you again.
for all that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's nice to talk to some like-minded souls.
Absolutely. All right, well, we will see you guys later, and I hope you enjoyed this episode of Humanity Awakened Radio. We will see you on the next episode.
Take care, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.